Friends, allies, and Americans, welcome to the Defense of Democracy podcast, where we tell the stories of folks who defend your children's rights by advocating for inclusive public school systems and who fight for diversity across our nation. I'm your host, Karen Swoboda. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Defense of Democracy podcast. My guest today is Lauren. Lauren is from Virginia, and Lauren has been a volunteer. She's a mom. She is a goat owner, but she's an advocate, and she's worked real hard in her state to fight against the restrictions imposed by Governor Youngkin and, a lot of uphill battles in the state of Virginia for sure. Lauren, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
So Lauren, tell me, where did your journey for fighting to protect your public schools start?
January 26th of 2023.
Wow, that is a specific date.
It is very specific. I had sort of prior to that gotten wind of a school board member that campaigned on the No Left Turn in Education platform. After her campaign, it was relatively quiet. And then all of a sudden that she made a Facebook post targeting transgender students.
Can you explain a little bit No Left Turn in Education? For those who don't know, that might be a new phrase. So tell us a little bit about that group.
It is essentially Moms for Liberty with a different name. So they have the same book list that they use to ban books. They began around the same time as Moms for Liberty and initially starting to go after masks in school and the non-existent CRT.
The same playbook. They're founded by the Heritage Foundation. They get their money from these extremist religious groups. So, okay, so you saw that.
And it was a red flag. And at that time, I didn't have a kid in school when she was running. My kids are still young. And so I was also new to the area. And so I just voted the way I voted, not for her, and then watched and waited, to see if anything was going to happen. So when this Facebook post happened on January 26th of 2023, she targeted transgender students and implied to the community that there was unfettered access to bathrooms, that transgenders, like not just transgender students, but boys could just use the girls' bathroom, which is a blatant lie.
She did that that was on a social media post?
Her official school board page.
Do you have an image of that we could share?
Not on me, but I do have I got the news on it. So I do have some links I can send you afterwards.
Good, because so if you're listening, we're going to put those links in the show notes. We always bring our receipts, right? We don't ever accuse without saying like this actually truly happened. Thank you. So check our show notes for those. I'm curious to see them myself.
Oh, it gets deeper. So that got my attention. I immediately commented, because I knew that she was, and my comment was, I knew you were going to bring your bigotry onto the school board. Because prior to, her being on the school board, she was very openly anti-LGBTQ. And so that immediately, I started getting messages from parents with transgender students saying, thank you. And I didn't know these people prior. So I started building a team sort of at that point, and we petitioned the board to censure her for violating her code of ethics. We were successful with that. They did censure her after several months, and she retaliated by suing them for defamation of character. And she did it on the very first day of school of 2024. And what ended up happening is that was 1 month before the school board early voting elections were happening. So this was a campaign strategy to silence her political opponents that were the former board. They were running for re-election. And that segued into them getting a full slate of extremists onto the school board. Subsequently, a year later, the suit was dismissed with prejudice, meaning she cannot sue again, and that it was a frivolous lawsuit. But it didn't go without causing harm.
So they weren't able to discuss anything or talk about anything, and that, oh my goodness, okay.
Yeah, so that's just one, aspect of it, but that is what got my attention and got my activism going. I am an accidental activist. This is not something that I've been doing for longer than that. That's the day it started for me.
Wow.
Yes.
So what have you seen? So talk to me about Governor Youngkin and the top-down attack on the public schools in the state of Virginia.
His very first day in office, he signed an executive order banning CRT. That does not exist in our schools.
Critical race theory, yes, again, and we've touched on it on the show before. It is a red herring. It's a boogeyman. It's something they lock into to scare people. And so he banned, quote, CRT, which is not taught in schools. Okay.
And then he opened a tip line to rat on teachers.
No, really?
Not joking.
Oh my God.
The public sort of retaliated and used that tip line to compliment teachers. It was very, very, very unpopular with the community. There's a lot of people from all across the political spectrum that love our public schools, and also that are teachers. So this was sort of a big deal. Something that was sort of behind the scenes, though, was him being able to appoint all the extremists to the State Board of Education. Mm-hmm. So he did not have a majority in our General Assembly, so much of the legislation was getting blocked, thank goodness, and his budget that he was trying to pass. However, he was able to attack public education and higher education because he did appoint the author of the education portion of Project 2025 to a higher ed board position. And then he appointed my county's sheriff's wife to the State Board of Education, and she is a lobbyist for school vouchers.
Wow.
She's not the only one. There's at least 3 that I have tracked that are charter school voucher lobbyists, and they work for organizations that advocate for those sort of things.
And this is, so if you're listening, I mean, like, I will boil it down. You're talking about a community, a state, where the majority of people are supportive of their public schools. They love their public schools. They love their teachers. But there are ways, and the biggest way to make it easy for extremists to get out there and do what they're doing is to simply not vote. So sitting home and not being aware of what's going on winds you up in, I mean, sorry to put it this way, Lauren, but like, you guys are a cautionary tale, because now you are under this regime of public school, of a group of people who want to disband and destroy the public school system, which is coming from the highest levels of government. And now you've got to fight back instead of just simply protecting your schools.
Correct.
So talk to me about, I don't know, what have you been through in fighting back against, people who are sitting in office who got there because people didn't get out to vote to prevent it, and now they're there. So what are you guys doing?
Well, first of all, I do want to touch a little bit more just on the State Board of Education, if you don't mind. So shortly after they got the majority of the board, they did pass a transgender model policy from the State Board of Education.
Oh, okay.
And then the Attorney General then started threatening school boards that if they didn't adopt, he was going to sue. And he did. He sued a few school boards that did not adopt it immediately. So it's pretty much a bully tactic, and it's coming from the state down. And to follow up, what we have been doing, we have been sort of networking with people all across the state and the country. With Defense of Democracy is why I joined Defense of Democracy. But what we've been doing is sort of connecting with the people in surrounding counties and figuring out what's happening. We've connected the dots. We've found so many similarities with what everybody is doing. And it sort of gives people a heads up on what might be coming. I've connected with many local groups that like we have the NAACP, and then we have like Equality Virginia, and we have all these other groups. And so what we're doing is we're sort of pooling resources, connecting with all sorts of people. I'm communicating with people from all over the political spectrum about what our school board is doing and how it really is a nonpartisan thing. What they are doing is nonpartisan, and the issues of how our school board is behaving is nonpartisan. So I've reached to so many people and had excellent conversations, and we are sort of teaming up and rallying up together.
Well, I think that to me, that's one of the most fascinating things about what you're doing in Virginia is the fact that you are, I mean, we're not just, it's not just hot air that we're saying that we're nonpartisan. Like we genuinely will work with groups as long as you are pro public schools, pro teacher, pro student, pro librarian. We will work with you. So can you give us a little more detail? I like to, instead of just saying, oh, we're nonpartisan, we'll work with them. Like, can you be a little more specific about some of these groups that you've worked with?
Well, yeah, there's a local group that it's not really an official group, but they have a big following on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And they sort of pride themselves with, free speech. And a lot of the stuff that's in the group echoes a lot of the conspiracies and the attacks on public education. However, I've been able to find common ground with people in that group about specifically actions of our school board, leaving partisan politics aside, specifically of the actions of the school board, because essentially what we're asking our school board to do is follow the rules, follow their code of ethics.
Right.
They are following their code of ethics. They're not going to single out certain students.
Right.
If they're following their code of ethics, they're not going to try to sneak policy through without public input. So, and same thing with banning books. If they are following their code of ethics, they are not going to ban books. So that is sort of the messaging that, I sort of start with.
Okay.
And it's been helping connect to a lot of people.
It's very interesting to me, the whole parents' rights thing, because if we're going to look at a group that is truly parents' rights, it's going to be a group like ours that is like parents have the right for their children to have access to whatever they want. And a single parent shouldn't pull access for learning materials from the rest of the group, right? Like we are the parents' rights movement. So any other group, regardless of your political belief, I mean, I have some members of my family who are libertarians, and we absolutely see eye to eye on a lot of things as far as hands off what my kid is learning.
Exactly.
Right.
You nailed it right on the head. We have so the book banning had started at our school district before the full slate of school board members got elected, the extremists, and we found that out through the Freedom of Information Act, and found out that 36 books had already been challenged by one single challenger. Wow. And now this challenger is now our vice chair on the school board.
Oh my God.
So what our district did in response to try to prevent book bans coming later is they started publishing their purchase lists each month and having on their website the purchase list and a Google form that you can fill out to say, I support the list as is, or comment on particular books. Come to find out, that school board member is still challenging books as a school board member on the purchase list. So what I did is I rallied behind all of the groups that I knew in my county and, there's a great retirement community that has a very active group of people that are concerned about our schools, and then the NAACP and, other local groups that, and library groups. We also have a Friends of the Library committee that helps with the public libraries. So with that is every month I send them a message. Hey, it's time. It's time to submit the feedback. Review this, submit the feedback.
Wow.
I've been able to see the feedback because I have access to that through the Freedom of Information Act. And she's the only one. And there's so many of us saying we want books in our schools. So another thing that they did was they changed the policy to where parents can be notified prior to their children checking out books.
Okay.
Well, with that, that's parents' rights.
That's parents' rights. Right. I have no problem with that.
No problem with that. You can choose for your own child. It is when you take a book off the shelf because you find something wrong with that book. Yeah. And when you have the right already to decide for your own child.
So Lauren, we're about halfway through the show, and at this point, I always like to do a volunteer shout out. Since you are the brand new volunteer state director for the state of Virginia, I'm wondering if there's anyone that you would like to give a special mention to at this point in the show.
Well, Brian has been with Defense for Democracy for
Brian,
a long time, and he is part of the sub group Veterans Defending Democracy, and he's sort of been my right-hand person statewide this entire time. He comes down anytime and he lives like 2.5 hours away from me. And anytime I've thrown an event for Defense of Democracy, he takes the drive down to help. He's also stepped up to help monitor the State Board of Education meetings, which are long and boring. But he's able to do it online and watch them. He can't make the drive down. We are also getting ready to do an advocacy day at the General Assembly, and he's planning on coming down too.
Well, that's fantastic. And I think that Brian is really like, oh, good. She mentioned Brian. I love him. That really, he does exemplify what a Defense of Democracy volunteer is, right? You are an action taker. You are active. You are out from behind your computer. You're in your car driving a couple hours to support your fellow Defense of Democracy volunteers. So that's great. I'm so glad you have Brian, and I totally and completely agree with you. So let's talk now about you as a mom of 2 young kids who are now in the school system. I mean, I will say that, and this is privilege for me, having my youngest child is now a senior in high school about to graduate. So they made it through, right under the wire of where this is all about to come crashing down. How are you doing with that? And what are you doing to prepare for that, if anything?
I'm fighting. I am fighting with everything I have. And it's very personal for me because I chose this school district because of the excellent school district that it was.
Right.
We were moving, we knew we were moving, and we spent years just picking the county that we were going to move to raise our kids. So when I move here and I see it start to just all fall apart, it's personal for me. I also have 2 kids with IEPs and 504s. So the special education aspect of it, IEPs and stuff that with the Department of Education, it's very personal, this attack on public education and wanting to dismantle it for me. So we do have an excellent administration and staff and teachers. And one of the side effects of the school board taking over is we had an increase of 150% of teacher resignations right after that election. So, we're sort of in a crisis right now, and I am sort of taking action, and that's how I'm dealing with it. I don't think that I could sit back and not do anything because the anxiety would just, not that I'm not anxious. I'm anxious right now. And at the school board meeting, I was shaking last night while I was reading my speech.
Right.
It's terrifying for me. I don't necessarily enjoy it, but it's something I have to do. And I feel like I'm doing something and taking actions to make change that is necessary, and not just for my kids, but for everybody's kids.
And, at this point, if you are in a place of privilege, and you know what, today, a place of privilege could be like simply not having kids in high school, in the school system, right? Yeah. If you are in a place of privilege and you are affected emotionally by everything that's going on, it's very easy to like, and I mean, I know I hear that little voice in my head too. I just want to hibernate right now. I want to be with my inner core, my family, my, tribe, and just live in a bubble and not pay attention to I have literally not watched the news since November, the national news. Yeah, I can't. But please, if you are doing that, and I have lost some really amazing, excellent volunteers who have stepped down because they feel like it affects them too much emotionally, which, everybody's mental health is precious. But I want to say that there are people like yourself who really can't, because if you step down and you give up, it's like you're giving up on your children. You're
Absolutely.
how?
And the thing is nobody else is really going to step up. I mean, we do have a situation now where the tides are turning. We've been for 2 years straight, going to school board member meetings and writing letters to the editor and sharing the message and networking and doing what we can to educate the community, because a lot of it is educating the community about what they are doing, because they, of course, are not transparent about what they are doing. They say one thing and do the other. And so it's us holding them accountable. It is the community seeing us every month get up there. I mean, I have missed a couple of meetings this year, but when I can be there, I am there. And I sometimes hesitate to go. I don't want to go, but when I go, I know I did what I had to do. And it is helpful when I get messages from other people thanking me. A parent of a transgender student, I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you're doing, and knowing that I have support and I'm speaking on behalf of other people too. So I can't stop. I can't just let them do it. We have to hold them accountable. And, we might not win and move mountains, but when I look back at this point in history, I'm going to know that I did what I could.
And you want to be, and me too, right? I want to be able to, and it all comes down to the children for me. I mean, if you're a mom, right, or parent, I want to be able to look at them and say, listen, I did everything I could, like you just said. I want my grandchildren to know that, because this is a historical moment in our country. So anyone who is here listening to that, I think Lauren really put it very well, and very powerfully. And you are inspired to volunteer. And please, white, straight Christian men, like, we need you too. Text the word volunteer to 845-208-9846. This will go to a live human who will put you in touch with your volunteer state director and mobilize you. And it is a rather simple, a very simple volunteer activity. We give you the tools to go to your school board meetings and speak out, or we ask for your help doing research if you are not comfortable. So there's a job for you. So again, the 845-208-9846 and the word volunteer. Now, Lauren, I always like to end the podcast on a positive note. Sometimes it's hard to do, but I would love to hear what you're looking forward to. It could be something personal. It could be something advocacy related. What's on the horizon for you that you're looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to I'm watching it happen in real time as the community starting to come together and stop the divisiveness. We're seeing the board's actions when they're not targeting the culture war stuff, and they're starting to do things like limit our access to information with the Freedom of Information Act. They hired a new lawyer to help them do that, and they now just fired the clerk and FOIA officer and hired a part-time friend. And they're seeing the fiscal irresponsibility with that. They're seeing the intent to withhold information. And it's starting to really bring the community together to be, hey, this is not okay. And I'm looking forward to improvement. I think that the community is really starting. I can feel it. I can feel the needle moving as far as the community coming together, and people who might have differing political opinions are coming together and agreeing on several things.
I completely agree with you. I think that is such an inspiring note to end on. And I thank you for your time joining the podcast. Lauren, we look forward to continuing our good work with you and supporting you in your efforts to protect your public schools in the state of Virginia. Thank you so much for joining the Defense of Democracy podcast.
Thanks for having me.